Hello, I'm live. I am reading out of Eyes of Horus, and I realized the last chapter I read, which is from part 6 of this book, the last minute or so my voice disappears, you can't hear. I thought it was me first of all, but I think it's generally so. So, I am now in part 6 of this book, and it is chapter 3, entitled Warrior Freeze. And the first part is already uploaded, and this is the second part, continuing from where my voice left. Are you suggesting that our priests should go and talk to them? Said Sebek a little scornfully. They would gain no entry to the temple, still less a hearing. This is one of Joan Grant's lives as HORUS-A, who is an heir to a Nomarch. They are now starting a battle to clean Egypt, and we are here continuing from the Oryx marches. Our priests do take a part in our plan, or at least 3 of them do. The Horus priests, Pata-Aru, Pata-Atho, and Kefa-Ra. I have consulted with them, and they say that what I suggest is in accordance with the great tradition. They have instructed me to tell you that what I propose to do has their entire agreement. It now only remains for you to approve the plan. After they had listened to what I had to say, my plan, with a few minor alterations, was adopted, and immediate preparations were begun to put it into effect. Hanuk sent a messenger to his men, telling them to join us as soon as darkness had fallen. Another messenger went to the captain of the hare, who was also to advance under cover of the first darkness, but not to come nearer than 2,000 paces of our present encampment, and to lie hidden in a long dry watercourse, which once must have carried an overflow from the great lake in a time when the lake was much larger than in our day. She has made preparations to receive the wounded, for she and her women would remain in the encampment, on which I ordered a guard of 100 mace bearers. I spent the day in giving detailed instructions to the men for the exact role they would have to play in the coming operation, and in superintending the construction of 100 scaling ladders, each of these being strong enough to bear the weight of 4 men and of a length to reach the top of the outer wall of the temple, which was 14 cubits high. Fortunately, we had a quantity of rope among our stores, and the trees surrounding our camp afforded all the other necessary material. I had come prepared for an attack by night, and each man had been provided with a dark blue loincloth, which made him far less conspicuous than he would have been in his white and yellow kilt, and the higher ranks had dark cloaks to wear until they reached their objective. All of us wore a twist of our colours on the left arm, so that even in the heat of battle friend and foe could be immediately identified. Since sunset, a strong wind, laden with dust and sand, had been blowing from the desert, and the moon was frequently obscured by clouds. The weather could not have been more ideal for our purpose when 2 hours before dawn we began our silent advance on the temple. The main entrance was on the east side. The gates of the pylon were closed from an hour after sunset to an hour before dawn, and one of our scouts had reported that the larger outer courtyard was deserted, and that only 2 temple guards were posted at the gate. This gate was in the charge of Sebek, who had with him 100 javelin men and 200 mace bearers. A smaller force of 100 under one of Hanuk's captains concerned themselves with a small door in the south wall, which was hidden by thickly planted bushes, and was obviously used as a private means of leaving or entering the temple. I thought it possible that the Sekhmet priests might attempt to escape that way, in which case their reception had been provided for. The west wall was free of any opening, and the north side had only the gate leading into the priest's quarters. It was here that a foray in force was most probable, and I gave its security to Hanuk, who had with him all our soldiers not already appointed elsewhere, except for the men I kept under my immediate command, 200 bowmen and 200 javelin men. I gave the other 3 leaders time to get their men into position and then led my force forward. We advanced in files of 4, made up of 2 bowmen and 2 javelin men, and each file carried a ladder. Behind me came the standard bearers of the oryx, wearing, as I did, full regalia, concealed under the long hooded cloaks which hid our sphinx headdresses. I knew the darkness on either side of me was thick with armed men, but so well did the sound of the wind conceal their movement that I might have been thrusting alone through the heavy curtain of night. A shadow loomed up. Someone touched me on the arm, and the voice of one of my scouts whispered. There were only 2 guards on each gate, and it was easy to get them before they had time to cry out. I had to be a little rough with one of them, but I think he will wake again tomorrow. So wonder what gave him his headache. They are all tied up, as neat as mummies, and will give no further trouble. About 70 paces from the west gate of the temple I halted, while the rest of my men took up their positions. Then we continued our silent advance. Every 4 paces a scaling ladder was in position, mine in the center of the west side, and the rest covering 3 sides of the priest's court, the 4th side being cut off from the rest of the temple by the wall of the sanctuaries. The men climbed the ladders, each leader waiting with his head just hidden by the top of the wall, the other 3 pressing close behind him. When we were all in place on the ladders, the leaders stretched out an arrow, which was grasped by the next man, so that there was an unbroken chain of contact. 3 jerks showed when the chain was complete. I and my standard bearers had already dropped our cloaks. The wind had swept the last cobwebs of clouds from the face of the moon, and the silver horns of the oryx standards shone like white flames. By breaking the chain of contact, I gave the signal. The men poured up the ladders and took formation on the top of the wall. I stood with a standard bearer on each side of me. The walls had grown living battlement, a frieze of alternative bowmen and javelin men, arrows notched to eager strings, arms poised to launch the flying shafts. Between the priest houses, 30 in all, lay row after row of sleeping men, their cloaks drawn over their heads to protect them from the sharp wind. A great shout echoed around the walls. The oryx! The oryx! Surrender to the oryx in Ra's name, in the name of Pharaoh. Amen. We bring you peace. Like an anthill disturbed by a hippopotamus, the courtyard burst into frenzied activity. Men leaped up, groping for their weapons. Most of them were still half asleep, and seemed to think that attack had come either from the outer gate or through the portal which led into the sanctuaries. You must look up to see Ra, I shouted to them. Look up and see the men of the oryx watching you from the sky. Someone loosed an arrow at me. It sang past my ear, but I could not see the direction from which it had come. Let one more arrow against us, and my bows shall sing. Each of my men has had time to select his mark. You are an easier target even than a cow plodding to turn a grindstone. Send forward a spokesman, so that from him I may receive your formal surrender. I saw a man almost hidden by shadow climbing stealthily on the roof of one of the houses. He was notching an arrow at me. I was lucky with my aim, though it had to be swift. I saw my arrow quivering in his shoulder. He dropped his bow and fell back with a scream of pain. Got him, said the man beside me. To my surprise, I discovered there is more satisfaction in killing a man who is trying to kill you, even than in killing a crocodile. I found I was enjoying myself, though I knew that if Mary could see me, she would have said it was childish and ridiculous to have made myself deliberately conspicuous. I knew that if she had been with us, she would have insisted on being beside me, or else made me change my plan. No, she would have been beside me, enjoying it as much as I was. There were sounds of furious activity at the gate, and then shouts of the oryx. A few of the enemy must have been trying to make a sortie, and had found an avenue of mace-bearers to greet them. In a few moments the sound of battle ceased, and a voice shouted, "We surrender to the oryx with the honours of war." A man who, by his insignia, I saw to be a captain of a gnome, followed by a torchbearer, came forward into the centre of the open space below me. The reed speaks with the oryx, not as a loyal soldier to a rebel, but as captain to captain. I surrender rather than allow my men to be massacred. You have outwitted me by a trick, and set upon sleeping men without warning of battle. Do rebels follow the warrior's code? We follow the laws of Horus, I shouted back. All men are free, save those who have made other men slaves. We fight for Egypt and for the return of her greatness under Amamenet, Pharaoh. I acknowledge no usurper to the throne, nor will I join with rebels. You thought yourself safe in the protection of Sekhmet. Do you still think she can protect her own? It seems the eyes of Horus can see more clearly, even though she should have the cat sight. Her curse upon you for blasphemy, he shouted back. I pretended to stare up at the sky and cried out mockingly. So powerful a curse and so little result. Surely Sekhmet's priests have more powers in her name. Tell them to come forth from the holes where they hide like rats. Then your men and mine can watch while my priests, the Horus priests, challenge yours to prove their powers. 3 against 3, as those 3 bowmen were champions for their kings. Why should I ask my priests to let you mock them? Mine is a challenge, not a mockery, and if your priests refuse it, then are they self-condemned as sly impostors? Did not your high priest declare that Set himself in his dark majesty has told him Menhed should hold the crook and flail, and so be Sekhmet's governor of this, a province of her husband's kingdom? He speaks bold words, now let him be more bold and try to prove them. If our priests triumph as they must, what then? You shall go free to let the issue between us rest on an equal combat, 100 on either side and all picked men. Will you allow your priests to prove that you had not the courage to chance a fight with the oryx on equal terms? What if they lose? When you have seen the victory in Ra's name by the power of the true priests who follow Horus his son, when you have seen the pride which upheld your priests running like sand out of a child's stuffed toy, then will I still give you 2 paths to choose. Either you swear the warrior's oath to bear no arms against us, or our cause for 40 days, or else in honor you may join our ranks and live for peace, while Amamenet rules. I take your challenge, he shouted back, and this was acclaimed both by his men and mine. The next chapter is entitled Trial by Magic. Joan Grant.